Hey everybody, Jason from Iron Rock Off-Road here. Today we're working on this 2001 Jeep Cherokee, and what we're installing is our new Rock Link 3-link long arm upgrade. This kit's going to convert a Jeep from short arm suspension to long arm suspension. The reason you'd want to do that is you're going to see a dramatic improvement in ride quality and handling on the highway, but off-road is where it really shines. Your ride quality and your suspension articulation go through the roof. So this kit comes with everything you need to convert it from short arms to long arms. We give you as much ground clearance as we possibly can. The kit fits everything from an 84 to 2001 Jeep Cherokee. Fits all transmissions, all transfer case combinations. So let's get this install started. First thing we're going to do is lay out all the parts on the bench, and I'll show you what each part does. Here I've laid out everything that comes with your kit. The kit's going to come with 2 lower control arms. The lower control arms feature bends for tire clearance, very heavy wall tubing, large diameter threads, pinch bolts instead of jam nuts. Not a big fan of jam nuts, they like to come loose at an inopportune time. The axle side has got rubber bushings. That's going to absorb any noise, vibration, and harshness. The frame side has our Iron Rock flex ends, and they're fully rebuildable, they're greasable. They're very heavy duty. They allow a ton of suspension articulation. Upper control arm, again, bend to clear the floor. Rubber bushing at the frame, at the axle side. Flex end at the frame side. Pinch bolt instead of a jam nut. Large diameter threads, heavy wall tubing. Here is your subframe. So this replaces your factory transfer case cross member, and it's got our lower control arm mounts built into it. Drop-out center section for transmission service, all 1/4-inch steel, very high ground clearance, very heavy duty. All these parts are powder coated for rust resistance, scratch resistance, that sort of stuff. All your hardware, instructions, transfer case drop if you're going to drop your transfer case, and perhaps the best part is these cool Rock Link decals. Alright, time to assemble our flex end. So I'm going to start by putting a couple of bolts in the washer. Put the washer on the bolt, or the race goes on the bolts. A little bit of lube in the inside of the race. Before I do that, I'm going to lube the housing a little bit. This is just regular multi-purpose grease. Any old wheel bearing grease will work. Push that all the way in until it stops. Next is the ball. Just going to put grease on the sphere part of the ball where it meets the race. Ball goes in. Lube up the race. Race goes down onto those 2 bolts. Push it all the way in. Wipe your hands. Should be done with the greasy part now. Drop the washer on. This is my favorite way to do this. These nuts, if you get them lined up just right, will draw right in without using a wrench. And I'm not tightening them with this ratchet, I'm just snugging them up. Alright, all my bolts and nuts are started. I'm just going to snug them up just a little bit with this impact. If you're not comfortable with that, definitely better to do it by hand. But I use this thing every day, so I'm pretty comfortable with how it works. So next I'm going to torque them. First torque is to 70 inch-pounds, and then we come back and torque them to 85 inch-pounds. Doing the crisscross pattern, just like you're torquing lug nuts. Now when you get it all together, this thing should be pretty firm to move. It should move smoothly and evenly, but it should definitely take some force to rotate it. Next I'm going to put in the grease zerk, and I'm all done. Next up we're going to thread the male end into the control arm. A little bit of anti-seize. Don't need a ton. Try not to touch it because this stuff gets everywhere. The big one goes in the lower control arms, the little one goes in the upper control arm. Time to adjust the lengths of our control arms. There's a chart right here in the instructions. It says the lower control arms are 36.5 inches center to center on the short side. To get the center to center length right, you'd have to have this flex end ball adjusted just perfectly, which is difficult to do. So what I'm going to do, because this is the same diameter on each end, instead of center to center, I can go left edge to left edge or right edge to right edge. And we're right on 36.5. This guy has an angle on it, so you can see it, if it's angled this way, the tube's facing the wrong direction. So we want it angled this way, and then it's fairly parallel with the one on the bottom. All right, control arms are adjusted to length. Next we're going to put in our pinch bolts. 3/16 Allen wrench. No wrench needed, the nut fits tightly in the pocket. I'm just going to get it snug for now, and we'll tighten it later. Okay, next we're going to take out our upper and lower control arms. Time to take out our transfer case truss member. We've cut off our lower control arm mounts. Next we are going to drill and tap this third mounting hole. So these are the two that your original cross member bolts to, and the next one forward, not this clearance hole, but the next forward hole that actually has some meat there to tap, is the one we're going to use. Next up we are installing our upper control arm into the subframe outer. You want to use the left one, it's the only one with two control arm pockets. So it's going to be wrapped in. Make sure your bolt goes from the center of the Jeep towards the outside of the Jeep. And I'm going to tighten it down all the way and torque this right away to 135 foot-pounds. Now we're going to install our left side subframe outer with the control arm already in it. M10 bolts in the factory holes, 7/16 bolt in the hole that we drilled. The 2000 and 2001 Cherokees, and only the old 2000 and 2001s, have a different tranny mount to them. So what you need to do is buy one from an older Cherokee and fit it in here. So you choose one out of like a 98 Jeep Cherokee. The only difference is it has a little keying pin right here. We're gonna have to grind that off to make this work. All right, so you grind the little pin down flush, clean it up with some brake cleaner, spray it with a little bit of paint. Then we're ready to install our new tranny mount. The offset pushes the bolts closer to the driver's side. You can also tell because the angle in this direction will only work one way. Put it the wrong way, it's going to be angled forward and it won't look right. Now we're installing our subframe center section. The Iron Rock off-road text faces forward. Reusing our factory tranny mount nuts. Now with everything loose, my subframe outer bolts are loose on both sides. My tranny mount nuts are loose. I'm going to put in my carriage bolt. Now I'm not using a T-case drop on this Jeep. If you wanted to drop your transfer case, for driveline vibration purposes. You'd put a spacer block that came with your kit, you'd put it in between this center section and this outer section, and you'd use the longer carriage bolts. All right, time to install our lower control arms. The clamping bolts here will face down when it's installed. The bend faces in away from the tire. We're going to install the frame side first using an M14 by 100 bolt. Nuts on, and we're ready to go. M10 by 80 bolt for the upper control arm. Our installation is almost complete. Our control arms are in place, subframe's fully bolted in. I just wanted to point out a couple of the highlights of this kit. No jam nuts anywhere, tire clearance bands, very high ground clearance, more ground clearance than any lift kit manufacturer that I know of. 3-link for zero binding. That's going to give you better ride quality and better flex. The 3-link also allows easier axle swaps down the road if you're going to put it in a 60 and a 44 in it. One thing I should note is when you install these, make sure that these control arm nail ends are angled the right direction. See how it's parallel to the mount. If you were to rotate 180 degrees off, the angle would be off. And let's get this thing tightened up and take it for a test drive. We finished tightening the rest of the bolts on the ground. That wraps up the installation. Time to take it for a test drive.